Okay, we're back to chapter 7, doing the problems, and this is number 5. And on number 5, it's basically asking what loss is in the 2016 year. Based on the facts, the loss between 195 and 220 was recognized in 215 at the balance sheet date, so that loss has already been recognized, so we're only concerned about 220, the loss from the 220 period of time, meaning the last balance sheet. This is just definitely the accrual approach to these transactions, so that's a $10,000 loss, hence the answer is D. That's the 2016 loss. Question 6 is next. Let's see what we have here. So it was just to show you that was recognized in 2015. So that's the loss there. Okay, question 6 is really a question of just reinforcing that foreign currency or U.S. currency, dollar strengthening or dollar weakening in relationship to a foreign currency depends on which side of the ocean you're on. So in the example here, when you are on the side of the Swiss franc receivable and the franc increases in relationship to the dollar, then it winds up becoming a gain to our company here in the U.S. because now they're going to receive a stronger European currency than they bargained for. So that's an increase in the franc if we're going to have foreign currency gains. And the opposite is the result if we have a payable. In the payable situation, if we are doing our payable in foreign currency and over time before we make the payment, the U.S. dollar strengthens, meaning the peso decreases in this case in value, then we get to pay off in cheaper pesos, so to speak, than we bargained for, and that also results in a gain. So the answer here is D, where it's both, not both, it's an increase in the franc and a decrease in the peso. So again, it's a great question to emphasize the relationship between the fact that the answer to these questions, whether it's good for a dollar to strengthen or weaken, depends on where you stand. All right, question 7. All right, so for question 7, I've outlined how this should work over here. In 2015, they want to know what was the total foreign exchange loss in that year. The first part, which you see here, is representative of the transaction that actually occurred in 2015. It settled on April of 2015, and it settled for an $8,000 foreign exchange loss. Then the loan payable, the part 2 of this question, settled also in settled in 2016, but we have a balance sheet date of 12/31/15, and we're told what the information is, that actually between the time we started in September versus the balance sheet date over here, there's a $20,000 loss, and this accrual basis that gets recognized, so the total comes together at $28,000, and that makes the answer to this question, question 7, the answer is D. All right, we skip to question 9. That's the next question on the makeshift test bank that we have here. And the reason I put this question on here is because we didn't cover this in class, but it's part of what I see the CPA exam doing, so I just wanted to emphasize how this works. We said correctly in class that the amount of the carrying value of an asset that we buy, even if we buy it in terms of foreign currencies, the asset price that we put on our books and records here in the U.S. is based on the amount of U.S. currency it takes the day we enter into the transaction. And so the key is, what is that date we enter into the transaction? And in the case of inventory, it's when we receive it. It's the date we receive it. So the key to this question is the date of receipt of the inventory happens to be when the spot rate of foreign currency exchange is at 23 cents U.S. dollar, so times the $100,000 for the foreign currency makes the actual carrying value of the inventory $23,000, date of receipt, and that would be the inventory. So that's a rule with inventory. I just wanted to make sure we follow. Everything else is based on when you purchase. Inventory is just a little bit different in that respect. And so as a result, the answer here is also D. Carrying value of the inventory is D. Now, even though we don't pay for it yet, now we run the risk. The next risk, even though we don't pay for it here at the date of receipt, when we do pay for it, should there be any change in the value of what we have to pay, if it was not hedged, which in this case it is apparently being hedged. If it had not been hedged, then it would be a foreign currency exchange gain or loss. All right, that takes us to the next question, which is question 11. And the first part of this two-part problem is assuming that there was no forward contract or no hedging type of a situation going on, then what happens to MNC on its books at the end of 2015? Well, that simply is the difference between the spot rate when they entered into the transaction versus the spot rate on the balance sheet date. In this case, it lost value by the tune of the difference between 0.0035 versus 0.0033, and based on 10 million, that works out to $2,000. So it was a $2,000 loss because the U.S. dollar has strengthened in relationship to the Korean won, and so you get less dollars at this point. So that's a $2,000 loss. Hence, the answer is C. Now we come to question 12. And if you followed even a minuscule amount